Have you ever witnessed a psychological massacre executed in dead silence? Society claims the loudest voice always wins, but they lied. Watch closely as one invisible, introverted girl uses terrifying, cold-blooded competence to publicly destroy a charismatic fraud in under 5 minutes. Have you ever heard the exact frequency of a human spirit shattering into a million irreparable pieces? I can tell you right now, it does not sound like a movie. There is no dramatic scream, no hysterical sobbing, and no theatrical plea for help. It happens in a silence so dense and suffocating that it feels like the air itself has been vacuumed out of the room. At Ngayon Duong Review 01 warmly welcomes you to a story that will completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about confidence, power, and survival in this ruthless world. Before we unravel this deeply personal and shocking journey, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Your subscription is the ultimate motivation that keeps us delivering these profoundly soul-stirring narratives. Imagine a school corridor long after the final bell has rung. It is desolate, echoing, and terrifyingly cold, looking less like an educational institution and more like a startup that just filed for bankruptcy. In the absolute darkest corner of the third-floor hallway, obscured by the long, distorted shadows cast by the dying afternoon sun, sat little Anna. She was curled into a tight, defensive ball, looking exactly like a wounded animal waiting for the end. Anyone who has ever tasted the bitter cruelty of life could take one look at this little girl and know that her emotional baseline had flatlined. She wasn't crying out. She was just staring blankly at the cracked floor tiles, physically present but completely logged out of reality. It was the devastating posture of someone who had just realized that her entire reservoir of self-worth had been unceremoniously wiped out. Watching Anna from the lens of someone who has bled on the exact same battlefield, I felt a familiar, sickening weight crush my chest. You see, I used to be that invisible child. We live in a brutal social economy that stupidly equates vocal volume with actual competence. In this ruthless market of human interaction, those of us who process the world quietly are instantly shoved to the bottom of the barrel. We are the ones constantly robbed of our light by the loud individuals, the smooth talkers who know exactly how to bark and howl to manipulate the crowd. You could possess a world-changing idea, but if you whisper it, you are a ghost. Meanwhile, a charismatic fraud can steal your concept, scream it from a podium with arrogant theatricality, and instantly be crowned a hero. It is a pathetic, sickening reality. Society inherently believes that whoever shouts the loudest is right, and that silence is an undeniable symptom of weakness. But today, we are going to violently tear down that fraudulent ideology. Society is dead wrong, and through the fragile yet fiercely volcanic soul of Anna, we are going to redefine the very anatomy of power. True courage is not the arrogant roar of a predator trying to intimidate the weak. Sometimes, the most terrifying, earth-shattering courage on this planet is found in absolute silence. To understand how this profound silence can transform into an unstoppable force, we must first examine the very machinery of the injustice that drove Anna into that dark corner. Just hours before I found her there, her spirit had been systematically dismantled in the middle of a crowded, suffocating classroom. For 3 grueling months, Anna had poured every ounce of her intellect and solitary passion into a groundbreaking environmental science proposal. It was a brilliant, meticulously researched piece of work that only a deeply observant mind could conceive. But then came Julian. Julian was the quintessential golden boy of the school ecosystem, possessing a booming voice, a blinding smile, and absolutely zero original thoughts. During the collaborative review session, he casually intercepted her presentation materials, aggressively and seamlessly weaving his name into her narrative. When they stood before the class to present, Julian dominated the physical space. He projected his voice, waved his hands with practiced charisma, and effectively claimed total ownership of her months of silent labor. Whenever Anna tried to interject to explain the complex methodology she had developed, her soft cadence was immediately swallowed by his booming laughter and confident, empty interruptions. The most agonizing part of this ordeal was not even Julian's blatant, shameless theft. It was the oblivious reaction of the authority figure in the room. The teacher, utterly seduced by Julian's theatrical delivery and dominant posture, praised his supposed leadership and visionary thinking. The educator entirely ignored the quiet girl standing right next to him, the one actually holding the raw data and the conceptual genius. Anna was rendered completely invisible in plain sight, a mere accessory to her own masterpiece. This is the terrifying echo chamber in which introverts are forced to survive on a daily basis. We are systematically taught by a broken culture that our substantive value is completely worthless unless it is wrapped in loud, aggressive, and boastful packaging. When Anna walked out of that classroom, she did not just lose a grade on a project. She lost her fundamental faith in the entire concept of meritocracy. She retreated to that cold, isolated hallway because the world had just loudly confirmed her deepest, darkest insecurity, that no matter how undeniably brilliant she was doomed to be a forgotten footnote in the triumphant story of someone who simply knew how to yell louder. Yet, what Julian and the rest of the oblivious world failed to realize was that pushing an introvert into the shadows does not extinguish them. It merely gives them the perfect vantage point to observe everything. As Anna sat curled in that desolate hallway, the paralyzing shock of the theft slowly began to metabolize into something entirely different. I watched the physical shift happen from a distance, a subtle but undeniable hardening of her posture. This is the secret alchemy of the introverted soul. We do not possess the instinct to lash out impulsively, to scream our grievances to a crowd, or to demand immediate, explosive validation. Instead, we absorb the trauma, drag it deep into the quiet laboratories of our minds, and we dissect it. In that profound silence, Anna stopped crying and started analyzing. She stripped away the emotional humiliation and looked at Julian's behavior with cold, clinical clarity. She realized that Julian's extreme loudness was not a manifestation of genuine power. It was a desperate, transparent smokescreen designed to hide his massive intellectual deficits. He needed her brain to survive in that class because he was fundamentally hollow. The moment this realization washed over her, the crippling weight of victimhood vanished. Society conditions quiet people to believe that our lack of aggression is a fatal flaw, but in reality, our hyper-awareness is an evolutionary advantage. Anna understood that she did not need to scream to reclaim her stolen territory. She just needed to let Julian's own chaotic noise destroy him. She began to map out a strategy that required absolutely no shouting, no theatrical arguments, and no desperate pleas for the teacher's sympathy. She was going to utilize the most terrifying weapon in an introvert's arsenal: undeniable, lethal competence executed with absolute emotional detachment. She realized that trying to play the extrovert's game of social dominance was a trap designed to make her fail. To win, she had to change the rules of the battlefield entirely. She would let the loud boy continue to inflate his fragile ego, knowing perfectly well that a balloon stretched beyond its capacity requires only the smallest, quietest pinprick to violently burst. Anna stood up from the floor, wiped the dust from her skirt, and walked away with a chilling serenity, carrying a quiet storm inside her that no one saw coming. Armed with this terrifyingly calm clarity, the very next morning became the stage for a masterclass in psychological dismantling. The stakes had been raised overnight. The school principal and a panel of district judges were visiting the classroom to select one science project for the state symposium. When it was their turn, Julian practically leaped out of his chair, eager to perform his stolen routine for a larger, more prestigious audience. Anna followed him to the front of the room, her demeanor completely unreadable, her silence acting as a dark canvas for his vibrant arrogance. Julian launched into his speech, his voice bouncing off the walls, charming the room with broad, sweeping generalizations about the environment. But then, the inevitable happened. A district judge, unimpressed by the theater, raised a hand and asked a highly specific, complex question regarding the chemical degradation rates outlined in the data. Julian froze. The charismatic smile instantly evaporated from his face, replaced by the sheer, naked panic of a fraud caught in the headlights. He stammered, his loud voice reducing to a pathetic, incoherent mumble, and he instinctively turned to Anna, his eyes silently begging her to whisper the answer so he could broadcast it as his own. This was the moment. Anna did not whisper. She did not look at him with anger or vindictiveness. She calmly stepped up to the microphone, bypassing Julian entirely. With a voice that was soft but possessed the undeniable, heavy gravity of absolute mastery, she answered the judge's question. She spoke with surgical precision, detailing the chemical equations, the variables, and the statistical anomalies, effortlessly weaving through the data she had birthed in solitude. When another judge fired a counter-question, she dismantled it with the same quiet, ruthless efficiency. Julian stood completely paralyzed beside her, physically shrinking with every word she spoke. He was entirely redundant, a ghost haunting his own fabricated success. Anna did not have to raise her voice to expose him. She simply let the blinding light of her intellect burn away his shadowy facade. The silence that fell over the room when she finished was not the suffocating silence of oppression. It was the breathless, heavy silence of absolute respect. In less than 5 minutes, without a single aggressive gesture, Anna had utterly deconstructed the loudest person in the room, proving that while volume can command attention, only substance can command reverence. That deafening silence in the room, the moment when the charade collapsed, was the beautiful sound of true justice. Anna was unanimously selected for the state symposium, while Julian was left to navigate the humiliating wreckage of his shattered ego. But the true victory was not the academic recognition. It was the permanent alteration of Anna's internal architecture. She never again viewed her introversion as a social disability to be cured. She finally recognized her quiet nature for what it truly was, an impenetrable fortress. As I reflect on Anna's journey, I am speaking directly to every single person listening to this who has ever been talked over, marginalized, or made to feel invisible because you do not constantly broadcast your existence. Do not let this loud, arrogant world gaslight you into believing that your silence is synonymous with weakness. The society we live in is deeply addicted to noise. It celebrates the fast talkers, the aggressive networkers, and the empty barrels that make the most sound. But noise is incredibly cheap, and it fades the second the breath runs out. True power, the kind of power that shifts paradigms and rewrites destinies, is forged in the quiet spaces. It is built in the solitary hours of study, in the deep processing of complex emotions, and in the meticulous observation of a world that is too busy shouting to actually see itself. You do not need to change your biological frequency to conquer your enemies or to claim your rightful place in this world. You just need to weaponize your depth. Let them scream. Let them boast. Let them exhaust themselves performing for an audience that will forget them tomorrow. When the time comes, let your unshakable competence speak for you. Be the architect of your own silent revolution. And remember that the most devastating storms do not announce themselves with a roar. They arrive in an unsettling, absolute quiet before they change the landscape forever. Keep your peace, hone your brilliant mind, and let your results echo into eternity. Anna's journey from a marginalized victim in a suffocating classroom to the undisputed victor on a prestigious academic stage is a powerful testament to the triumph of substance over superficiality. Her story dismantles the pervasive cultural myth that success requires aggressive self-promotion and relentless noise. When Julian stole her meticulous research, he relied entirely on society's bias toward the loudest voice, mistakenly equating Anna's quietness with defenselessness. However, he gravely miscalculated the profound depth of the introverted mind. Instead of engaging in a futile, emotionally draining shouting match, Anna retreated to the sanctuary of her own intellect, processing her humiliation into cold, calculated strategy. She weaponized her silence, allowing Julian's inflated ego to stretch to its absolute breaking point before delivering the devastatingly quiet pinprick of undeniable competence. This narrative serves as a vital reminder that volume is merely an illusion of dominance, while true authority is inextricably rooted in knowledge, preparation, and emotional regulation. Anna did not need to alter her biological frequency or become an extrovert to reclaim her stolen dignity. She only needed to lean into her innate evolutionary strengths. The loudest person in the room may temporarily capture the spotlight, but it is the quiet, observant architect of ideas who ultimately controls the long-term narrative. Anna's silent revolution proves that intellectual depth, resilience, and absolute mastery will always outlast the fleeting, hollow echoes of empty charisma. True power does not require volume. It requires substance. Silence and hyper-awareness are not social deficits, but strategic advantages that allow you to build undeniable competence while others exhaust their energy seeking immediate validation. Whether you are navigating a competitive workplace, a classroom, or complex personal dynamics, stop feeling pressured to outshout the extroverts around you. When faced with loud, boastful individuals attempting to overshadow your contributions, refuse to play their game of volume and theatrical dominance. Instead, redirect that energy into mastering your craft. Document your work, deepen your expertise, and meticulously prepare for the moments that truly matter. Let the loud talkers dig their own graves with promises they cannot fulfill. When the inevitable moment arrives where complex problem-solving and actual substance are required, step forward calmly. Your prepared, quiet expertise will naturally speak for itself, instantly exposing the hollow noise of those who merely pretend to lead. Have you ever experienced a situation where your quiet hard work was overshadowed by someone louder, and how did you handle it? Please share your story and perspective in the comments section below so our community can read and learn from your experience. If you found value in this video, please hit that subscribe button. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating deep, meaningful content for you.